Well, here we are, 2 minutes late to ZDTV. So very sorry to anybody who was so excited to join the live stream right on time because unfortunately our provider has provided me some technical difficulties. Like I'm all out of sorts right now, so I'm very sorry. Oh, there we go. Now it's a little bit bigger. Yeah, so the normal provider we use is having some problems, which I was trying to solve before this ZDTV and was not able to solve. So I'm going to go for the ZDTV and we'll see how it works out, whether or not you can make use of it. Basically, it looks like there's a vignette over the entire thing I screen share, and that has the effect of washing out whatever you look at. So if you see something and it looks washed out, just go back, rewind the video, watch this intro, and know that it wasn't my fault. All right. Well, with that being said, let's get into it. Let's see. Like I said, I'm all out of sorts now. I'm late. I got to share my screen again. Hang on one second because we're here. Yeah, see how it's all washed out? Ah, so frustrating. And it's interesting because it's not like the black is still black. I don't know what's going on. It's like HDR is turned on and it's broken. Maybe it's Windows' fault. Never know. Anyway, we're here March 21st, 2025, doing a ZDTV about setting up a very first OpenZiti overlay. And I've done these kinds of ZDTVs in the past, and it's always nice to revisit it because things change. People might be new to ZDTV, might be interested. And so we're going to go through a whole entire series of what OpenZiti is, how to OpenZiti, and do that sort of a series of ZDTVs. And in this one, we're going to just be starting up the OpenZiti overlay and just get it all going. All right. So that's what we're going to be doing. But before we start, I have one more thing to talk about, which is dun 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 dun. Oh, let me hide myself. Poof. All right. And that color is not the color of the slides. Anyway, zrok 1.0 has been released. Yay! Big things. If you have not tried zrok, you should try zrok. You can go to myzrock.io and sign up for myzrock, which will get you access to zrok. And zrok is basically it's like a global reverse proxy. And so the idea of myzrock or zrok.io is to give people access to your your people, right? Give you access to your services, your servers in a very easy, friendly way, where the control is kind of inverted. With an OpenZiti overlay, I'm going to bring myself back on the screen now, just because I know everybody clamors for me when I'm not on. Because an OpenZiti overlay is basically focused around an administrator controlling the overlay network, and you generally are just part of that overlay network, or you could be given an identity. You could be a developer doing developer things. And it's not so much about you controlling access to your services, the individual. It's about a centralized administrator doing that sort of thing, as opposed to zrok, which is basically no centralized administrator, and every individual controls access to the things they want to share. And you can choose to share them privately or publicly. Private sharing, cool feature of zrok, is based entirely around OpenZiti's connectivity. So you have a true zero trust connection from end to end. You have to initiate the share, you have to access the share. Public sharing, kind of the antithesis of OpenZiti, allowing anybody to have access to your server, but you have a nice secure connection to the zrok overlay network, to the OpenZiti overlay network that runs under zrok. And zrok just provides you that global public proxy part. A lot of P's there. Very powerful stuff, though. Like, I use this routinely to share files, particularly short-lived shares. zrok is just smashing at that sort of thing. But a whole bunch of other stuff in zrok. And we're going to have Mr. Michael Quigley on maybe next week, in the coming weeks for sure, to talk about what's new in Xerox 1, what's going on, maybe more roadmap. We've had him on in the past, and we'll have him on again. So yeah, big news, Xerox 1.0. All right. Well, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the website. Again, terrible apologies. I don't know if I can get a dark mode, but I mean, like when I look at this, maybe if anybody's watching, if chat could tell me, maybe this is just an artifact for me. Maybe this doesn't look all washed out to you. That'd be great. To me, when I look at the little preview, it's very washed out and very difficult to read. So let's, as always, make it comically large. And I don't know how to get the dark mode. If I could get the dark mode real quick, I would do dark mode, but I don't see the dark mode on here. I thought I would see it somewhere. Anyway, this is a repository which I put out onto the GitHubs let's go to a notepad and bring up the URL. Oh, you know what? I don't need to go to notepad. I can just put it right in. I'll put it into chat. There is the GitHub URL, and I'll show it. Right there, github.com/OpenZiti-kitchen/ZDTV, brand new repo I made just for these sorts of things. A lot of times I'll make a gist or do various things, but what I wanted to do, as you can see here, we've got to learn OpenZiti part 1 all in one. I'm going to basically make a little series, and every time I do a new ZDTV, there'll be a new part, and we'll just take previous compose files or previous config files or whatever we have, and we'll just advance them forward. All right, so if we look at part 1, it's got some instructions, so you can actually go through. Actually, I did all right, I think. I did oh, I gotta fix that. Did a whole bunch of stuff out here. You can go and read it. We're gonna read it together. We're gonna go through it together, and we're gonna just skip some of it. So first one, let's see, part 1, March 21st, 25th, 2020. 2005. All right, typos happen. Let's see. What we're gonna do in this basically is I have a virtual private server out in the cloud somewhere, a VPS, and that virtual private server has Docker installed on it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Docker to provide me a clean room type of environment, so that as the OpenZiti TVs progress, I can go back and delete the whole thing, start all over again, which is why I chose to use Docker. Also, if you're running all this stuff locally at home, Docker does provide a nice isolation layer for you, the learner, because if you don't expose ports inside of the Docker realm, you won't have access to those ports. Kind of acts in a way sort of like a firewall or like the internet. And if you look at our documentation, we've had I call it the complicated Docker compose file for quite some time. And actually, let's go over to the docs, openziti.io/docs/learn/introduction. You'll see what is an OpenZiti overlay right here. And under the quick start section, I was just talking about with Docker Compose, we have a complicated Docker Compose file, and it builds this kind of a Docker environment. We're not going to start here. It's too complicated, right? We're going to start with a virtual private server, lives in the cloud, one node and one node only. And we're just going to learn about what OpenZiti is, how I even set this thing up, and how to get going with it. And so if you come back to here, you'll see we are going to use Docker. You do need to make a Docker volume. Well, you don't need to, but I mean, like, it's up to you. If you're a pro at Docker, you can just skip half of these steps. You'll understand all this stuff. But if you're a noob and you've never used Docker and you're getting into this, a volume is going to be used to house all of our persistent data. There's a Docker file that you'll build, and it's built on Ubuntu. So the image name that you tag is called Xubuntu, obviously for Ziti. And it'll just have a whole bunch of tools and stuff baked into it, which are things like sudo, Python, JQ, wget, nettools, ping, guns, all this kind of stuff, right? And so these tools will all be there so that we can play around in there. And if I have to later on, if I have to add a tool that wasn't there, I'll go back and I'll update this Docker file so that you can rebuild your own little test image. Oh, it also, I believe it installs Ziti in here. Yeah, it also uses the package repos and installs the Ziti CLI from the OpenZiti controller, which is right here. And that way you'll have Ziti on your path too. So there's a little bit of magic in there, but maybe I'm hoping, it's the right amount, a small amount of magic. A Let's Encrypt certificate is incredibly useful. If you're not aware, PKI, public key infrastructure, runs the internet, runs the world basically, lets you securely connect to things, and it's why when you go to a website, HTTPS, you don't get the scary privacy error like this saying your connection is not private, right? So a certificate which is shared or created from a CA, a certificate authority that is pre-trusted, meaning your operating system has decided that the certificates that are presented are to be trusted. Those types of certificates, you don't get the scary, HTTP thing. It just lets you go through to HTTPS and you're happy because your trust has already been established by your operating system. When you deploy your own OpenZiti overlay network, you are going to create your own PKI, and you will see the scary "your connection is not private." A lot of people think this is bad. This is not necessarily bad. If it's a website that you aren't operating and owning, obviously that's potentially scary. But if it's your website that you are running and owning, this is really no big deal. Still, it's nice to not have to deal with this sort of thing. So, for example, this instance of Ziti, and this is the Ziti admin console that we'll deploy here in a minute. It's deployed out to controller.zrok.clint.demo.openziti.org, right? That's my URL. I have a certificate. It is valid. It is secure. And where do I see the certificate? Right there. And you can see this one is from Let's Encrypt. And so if you go back to look at, I'm going to close these now. If you go back and look at this, I do have a small little section on Let's Encrypt certificates. Hopefully I did it right. Like I literally did all this morning. So if I screwed something up, please, let's fix it together. All right. And I've already done this step locally. If we take a look at this real quick, in order to get a Let's Encrypt certificate, we're going to want one that is a wildcard certificate, meaning it has a star dot in front. And so what this will mean is anything that is referenced like a potato.zdtv.demo.openziti.org or controller or zrok or clint, whatever it is, router, right? Whatever goes in the front, a wildcard certificate will be valid for everything. So that's what the star means. And then when you also get it, you can also get it so that it's valid for just itself and not star dot. So, and I put my email address. Maybe I should fix that too. Usually I tell Ryan to fix bugs during these ZDTVs, but maybe Clint needs to rewatch the ZDTV and find the bugs that he found along the way. And so, once you've run this command, what will happen? And you can see I've run this with Docker again. I've also mounted that volume that I talked about. I think I told you up here to create the volume. Yep. I've mounted that volume, and then I'm using the manual DNS challenge. And the reason why I'm doing that is so that you don't have to go through and figure out how to automate this. You certainly can. And if you are interested in never having to upgrade your certificates again, it's worthwhile. But for this perspective, this command works with every DNS provider that there is because it's manual. And when you run this command, you'll see a little thing like this. We're requesting a certificate. We want you now, as your domain registrar, to go make this record. And so if we do this together now, we can take a look at what does this mean? And again, I hope that it's not washed out for you, but it's washed out for me. If we do a dig, which is a utility that lets you make a DNS request, NS lookup. So if you're in Windows, it would be NS lookup, similar. On Linux or Mac, it'll be dig, assuming it's installed. It should be installed. We can dig for this record, And then we can say, I think it's just txt. Oops. And I like to do plus short, because when you do plus short, you just get a little tiny bit. You don't get all this extra noise. And so you can see I was able to add a DNS record to my registrar with a little bit of text that Let's Encrypt told me to go put out here. Let's see, are they the same WS? No. So I ran this a couple times. And so that was what Let's Encrypt, though, or sorry, certbot said, you need to go put this there. And then certbot can go and verify you own that domain. And this is the way certbot does it. So it makes you go do this. Again, you can automate all this. You can give it your AWS credentials and just let it automate it away, or GoDaddy, or what. There's a bajillion different registrars. Figure out how to get a Let's Encrypt certificate. All right. Once you have your certificate, your key and your cert, it'll be put by default into Etsy/Let's Encrypt, but we'll see this in a minute. It's not going to be that exact location. It'll be on the /OpenZiti/live instead of /Etsy Let's Encrypt. And then you have to chown the volume. And so you have to do this too, because when you make the in fact, let's start doing this stuff. Let's clear this. Let's SSH out to the, I just have it called CD zrok. Read nothing into that. All right, so from here, let's go back and let's see, Docker volume create OpenZiti. I'm not going to delete this because I've already obtained my certificate. So I'm not going to do that, but I can run this command right here. And this will, as root, it will run a chown command to chown that OpenZiti directory. And so nothing should happen. It's what you should see. And now you're ready to run the compose file. So now I have this thing checked out, git OpenZiti test kitchen, Ziti TV, learn OpenZiti part 1, all in one. And so there's a Docker file. So if you clone this, git info, if you clone that URL again, then you can follow along with me and we can do this all together if you're interested. And I'm going to go quickly, so you might need to pause the video. All right, Docker compose up. Now, when I do this, nothing's going to appear to happen, right? And that's perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and look at the compose file real quick. If we look at the compose file real quick, you'll see it runs as a different user, which is nice. You pretend that you're in like a virtual machine. It'll mount a couple of volumes, and I probably got to take this out because I just slapped it into the OpenZiti directory, trying to make it easier for everybody. And then where's the command? Oh yeah, and there's no command. I used to use Sleep Infinity, but instead I switched that over to running in the Docker file down here. It'll just run SSHD. And the reason it does this is because we're going to SSH to this machine. Well, I'm going to, not you. I mean, if you want to, DM me, I can set it up. But what's cool about this is I'm going to be running this inside of Docker, inside of a virtual machine that is somewhere else, right? And that Docker container will not have port 22 exposed. I'm going to SSH using Ziti into this machine. Now, obviously, to set it all up from the start and to do the demonstration, I have SSH to this remote machine, but this is not the one that my computer will be SSHing to. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Do I have to remove Bob? Nope, I don't have to remove Bob. All right, cool. And so now we can Docker compose up. And if you want to -d, you can -d. The difference is it'll either run right here in the console, and when you control C, it'll stop, or you'll have to stop it yourself. Now, personally, I always run it in the console like this, so that by hitting control C, the whole thing stops. And that's just because I forget to turn things off a lot. So, but I'm going to run it with -d. And when I do that, we'll see everything's running. So if I do a did the keyboard die? Let's see. Oh, DPS. Oh, no. Alias DPS. Yeah. So my alias DPS does a Docker PS and then formats the command. And it just does this because when you see, if you run that command, it gives you a really small little view into your Docker Compose world. If you just do a regular Docker PS, it's big and ugly. It tells you how long it's been up for. It wraps around. And I don't want that. I want nice, simple. I want to see that part 1 has been running for 44 seconds and has these ports exposed, 6700 and 6701. You can change these if you'd like. If you go back to here and we look at the template.env, if you just fill out your values in here, obviously not ZDTV, right? If you just fill out your values and rename this to .env, then it all should just come right up. And if it doesn't, again, you can hit me up in the chat right now, or later on we can chat about it, or maybe in a future ZDTV. All right, so we know we have Docker running. Let's now Docker exec interactively into part 1, and let's run bash. And this is all just that was preamble to pretending I have a virtual machine. Now I have a virtual machine. This one just happens to be running inside of Docker. All right, if we go back to the learn, and if we've done all of these things, I should be able to, I'm not going to show you my entire environment, but like if I were to echo the ZD router port, I've got port, 6701 set. What about the external DNS? I should explain external DNS. Since this is out in the internet, I want to be able to connect to it. And so I need to know my external DNS entry. As you can see, this is from Amazon. And Amazon's nice. They always give you a EC2, your IP address, your region, and then .compute domain name. Makes things a lot easier in a lot of ways to have a domain name. That way, if the IP address changes, you don't get too messed up. When you start your first OpenZiti overlay network, part of starting that network will require you, like we talked about before, to build your own PKI. Now, the OpenZiti quick starts are made out of bash, and so you can go read that bash if you want. I don't recommend you do that anymore because we have codified the quick start. What that means is if you run Ziti edge help, you can see quick start. There is a quick start command now. And if we go back to here, you'll see we're going to be running that exact command. And so let's go ahead and run that exact command right now. Paste. When I run this, you can see that the quick start's going to go through. It's going to make a PKI. It's going to put all the pieces into the right places, and it's going to start the OpenZiti overlay. And so that's literally all it took. One command. I mean, I did a bunch of extra stuff to set up for this, but one command to do a thing and to start an OpenZiti overlay network. And so now if I were to go out to, let's see, let me, from this computer, I want to do it over there. No, I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to do it like this. So now the top pane here, this is going to be the remote computer, and the bottom pane here, this is going to be my local computer. And so maybe I'll export. Let's do export. Come on, can you spell? export ps1. Actually, let's do an echo ps1 first. How about with $1 on there? Let's do this. Let's do an export ps. Oh, I'm going to make it bigger. An export ps1 equals quote, paste quote. And then instead of the IP, let's just say this is at local. I don't need $sign for this. At local. And what does that look like? Okay. So now it says CD at local. Cool. So now you know this is my local computer, and the top one's the remote computer. I have a tiny little script here that I can source that will let me log into that remote server. And it says port 6700 was refused. Now, this was not part of the show. That means I probably have a port blocked somewhere, or my IP address is changed, or something else is going on. Let's SSH to CD zrok. And let's do okay, right there, EC2 3.142.245.63. 6700 was refused. Let's look at LNTP, our listeners. We have 6700. Let's docker exec it into part 1, run bash, and run ss minus LNTP inside of here. Aha! Port 1280. This again was not part of the program, but I screwed it up somehow. Command not found. I see. Oh, it's because this doesn't have the backslashes in it. Let's see. If I view the raw file, let's view the raw file. How do I read me? View the raw file. The raw file has backslashes. Boy, that's an interesting little gotcha. All right, so let's try this again. Now, since I screwed it up, I'm going to rm minus rf OpenZiti TV. Oh, it didn't even make it. Fantastic. Let's try this again. Let's try this again. Let's see now. Will there be an OpenZiti TV folder? There is. There should be a PKI directory. Remember, we're making our own PKI, setting all this stuff up. Perfect. Now this should work. Where is that command? Should just type it. Ziti TV. Oh, I'm on the wrong. That's why. Dot Ziti TV. There we go. That was how it was supposed to happen. So now you see I was able to log in to my OpenZiti instance using the Ziti CLI. Now, if I can't really show you because it's got my password in it, but let me see if I can go to a different screen real quick and cat what this thing does. Okay. Yeah. And so here's the gist of what I did there. I set some variables, and so these things are now exported in the shell because I sourced them. And then I ran the ZDEdge login command for the given advertised address at the given port and for the given user and the given password. And so I said, oh, that's what I did. You can do that without having to obscure it because I'm on ZDTV. So a little different. All right. So now that's all running. Let's do a ZD edge. Let's go back and make that PS1 with a space at the end. So now there we go. Now I can cd to my temp directory and I can ZD edge create identity. What am I thinking? Create identity. And I always like to use bob.jwt. And so we've already established our OpenZiti overlay network. It was that fast and that easy for a developer one. This is not like a long-lived running one, right? As soon as I hit Control-C, this thing's going to go away. But we're here for learning. We're not here for long-lived. If we want to turn it into long-lived later, then, provide feedback, make comments, any of that sort of stuff, talk about it in discourse, anything that we want. All right. So now I'm going to make an identity, and I like to use Bob just because it's easy to type. And so now I have an identity named Bob. As you probably have discovered, I use Windows, and the Windows desktop tunneler looks like this. We call it the ZD desktop edge for Windows. And so now I need to add Bob to my local tunneler. And so since I know I'm in the right directory, I just click add identity and I click the file. And now Bob is an identity on my computer. Bob can't do anything. Zero trust. I didn't really talk about zero trust much, but zero trust I like to call explicit trust, meaning you have access to nothing until you are granted access to something. Along with that, when you bootstrap trust at a different location, there needs to be mechanisms that actually correctly and properly bootstrap that trust. So, for example, one of the things you saw me do here is I made an identity, and I don't think, will Bob be there? Yeah, Bob is there. You can go look at this. This is a signed document. It's a JWT. If I cat it, pipe this into cut minus D field 2. So a JWT is a signed document, has 3 parts separated by periods. The first is the header, the second is the payload, the third is the signature. If you send somebody a token and you put it on screen like this, they can use it. You could copy that and use it. If you tried to use that against my running Ziti instance, first of all, I'd see one of these handshake fails happen up here because I haven't gotten a certificate yet. And so the controller knows an incoming connection is coming in and it's not presenting a client certificate. So that's why you see this. And then you will see that this token does not work for you because I've already used it. I've already enrolled it. This is a single use token, a nonce, and once you use it, it's burnt, and so you can't ever use it again. And so if I tried to enroll again, or if you tried to use it again, it will fail. But if we look at this token, and that's why a lot of times don't paste this into the forums, right? Like don't send your JWT to people that you don't want them to use, because it's literally all I need in order to connect to your network if it hasn't been used. But if I just pull off the header and I pull off the signature and I leave just the payload, that field 2, and I pass it into JQ. What did I do wrong? Cat. I mean, that should work. Cat, paste to cut, minus D, paste, field 2, paste. All right. Oh, what's going on? Okay. Oh, yeah. Sorry. We have to base 64 minus D first, which means decode that base 64. There we go. We'll see the payload. Here's the payload. And the way this works is a JWT being a signed document has a bit of signed data in it. And I don't know if I can find the signed data real easily, but it's going to be like this. I'm looking for that period. Where's the period? I don't know. It's a bunch of this. I can't find my human eyes can't find the period. There's a period in there somewhere. But that signature signed data is then able to be used by the tunnelers, because there's an issuer inserted into the JWT. You can actually go to that URL. This is where you'll get the scary, your connection is not private, because it's HTTPS using your private PK, your private public KPI, PKI. Yes. Thank you. Oh, I see. Alexander caught it for me. Thank you. Yes. I didn't see the chat come in, but thank you. Yes, sir. All right. And so what happens when you do this enrollment is you, as the human running the overlay network, you are the root of trust in this case, because you're sending this token to somebody. Now, you can decide for yourself what is the appropriate way of sending a token. Since these JWTs are sensitive documents, you should treat them like passwords. You should treat them like private keys, but they're only good for one use. So they're not as prone to compromise as like a password that's reusable or a key that's reusable. Still, you should try to use care. Email oftentimes is good enough to be, just practical, because if somebody uses it and then you ask, hey, did you connect to the network? And they say, no, I can't. Somebody used it. Well, then immediately you can turn off that access. So I've done it just through the Ziti CLI personally. I logged in and I did it all to my local computer, so I didn't have to transfer it. But you'll see me a lot of times just copy and paste these things, like, because it's just a text document. It's really easy to copy. It's really easy to paste. So if I SSH somewhere, I might SSH there. I might just copy it, paste it. I might SCP it. I might email it. If you use, let's see. So let's get into the next little section. I didn't document the ZAC yet, but if you look at the part 1 all-in-one, you'll see there's a fetch zac.sh included, and it's a big bash, and all it does is it goes and it gets the latest version of the ZAC for you. And so let's go and add the ZAC, because right now we've done everything through the CLI, and that's fantastic. I love the CLI, but maybe you want to click some things because you like clicking things. Let's click some things. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. Let's explore this too. If we look at the OpenZiti, let's look at it down here. SSH to CD zrok. Oh, as notice, I'm not going to be local anymore. Now I'm remote. Docker exec minus IT to part 1 bash cd to OpenZiti / ZDTV. This is where all clear. Let's get to the top. This is where all of your config files have gone to. The quick start will create a controller.yaml. It will create a router quickstart.yaml. And both of these are going to be usable individual now. And I think the next ZDTV or somewhere along the line, we might split off the router from the controller. Right now, they're squished together. They run in one process. But if we look at the controller.yaml, one of the other things that I did with the compose file is I added this right here, the alt server cert. So at the beginning, I did a preamble about the alt server cert stuff. If you set this environment variable, when you run the quick start will emit a config file, and that config file will have the alt server certs set for you already. And so right now, we could all go to https:// let's call it controller.zdtv:6700 dot yes, that's, come on now, I love it. I love doing stuff live. What did I screw up here? Let's look at my advertised address. Let's see, do I have ZDTV in here? ZDTV, boop 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 boop. No, okay, good. I'm gonna figure this out now. Did I stop? Oh, yeah. You know what? It helps if you're running it. So let's go back. I turned it off once. I can turn it on again. All right. I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and fetch the Zach first, because that's what we're here for. Fetch Zach. And if you just run it just as it is, I've already Docker copied it into the volume. I probably need to add that to the doc as well. When you run it, you can see it'll go out, it'll fetch the Zach, and it'll tell you, hey, now go add this to your config file. And so down here, we are editing the config file. And you can see at the end, there's already like a little section for you to put the Zach in. The fetch Zach, actually, I made sure that it has the right spacing, because YAML is kind of particular about that. But it has the right spacing. You should be able to just copy it, paste it right at the end, just like this, and then right quit. And so that's what I did. Let's take a look at that real quick. It just tells you what location your Zach is delivered from. And since it's the only API, and this is another thing I plan to do in a future series, is to split the APIs. Since it's the only binding that we have, it just goes right at the bottom. And when you do this, it'll just work. And then we'll start this OpenZiti up again. I'm going to get rid of the password this time. You only need that the very first time you run the quick start, because it initializes your database. But if you don't, then when I do a PS and I show you that Ziti is running, you'll see my password clearly. So, and again, that's how quickly Ziti starts, right? Like, it's up and running already. All right, so now everybody out there should be able to go to this. Fun fact: OpenZiti requests you to submit a certificate, and so to authenticate to OpenZiti. And so when you first go to an OpenZiti controller, you'll get this really, you just can't get a better user experience than this little select a certificate dialog. It's like the epitome of user experience. And what it's trying to tell you is OpenZiti is requesting you to submit a certificate that OpenZiti will use to verify your identity. When you go to most things HTTP with Ziti, you can just click cancel. Now, in a future series, we are going to select one of these. For example, let me show you. Let me go to this zrok instance. This zrok instance is one that this is one of my play ones. And you can see I've got a whole bunch of IDPs that I can log in with, but I can also not do anything and just log in. And the reason why I can just log in like that is because this instance of OpenZiti here, this instance in this browser, I have automatically selecting certificates. So I didn't get that ugly little pop-up at the top, and I didn't have to select any certificate because I've already set it all up. So when I go here, I can just click log in, and I'm logged right in. And it's using certificate-based authentication, which is really cool. We'll do that in a future ZDTV. I did that like a couple ZDTVs ago, but we'll do it on this new instance too. All right, so where were we? We were going to this URL now. And so you can go to controller.zdtv.demo.openziti.org on port 6700, and you can see a correct HTTPS secure connection. And so now we have our Let's Encrypt certificate serving that particular URL. Now I can type /Zach at the end. And when I do that, you'll see the Ziti admin console pops up. And I've already got my username and password saved. And so I can go ahead and Bitwarden asks me every time. And I can just log right in. And now we're looking at the Ziti admin console. So in 40 minutes so far, a little fumbling here and there, backstory, we've got a whole thing up and running, ready to run, ready to play with a nice little pretty UI that we can go and do things. If I were to click on identities here, we'll see Bob. All right. And so there's Bob. And to go back to our original, what are we going to do today? Right. Oops. Where is not this? Where? Come on, PowerPoint. Behave. There it is. Poof. There it is. We are going to set up a service. I did a little preamble before about the Docker Compose and the whole SSHing and all that stuff. Well, you got Bob, and Bob is online, and Bob has access to no services. And so let's give Bob access to a service. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this new little wizard that Ryan made not too long back, maybe a few months ago. And we're going to make a simple service. And this is just really a shortcut to do 5 things, I think, 5 things. This will make you a intercept config, make you a host v1 config, make you a service. Those 3 things kind of tie together. And then it'll grant users access to dial the service, and it will grant users or identities access to bind or host the service. And so what we want is we want Clint's computer to be able to SSH to Clint's Dockerized Ubuntu instance that's out in the cloud somewhere. And so we'll make a simple service, and we'll just call this SSH to Docker or whatever. I'm not going to give it any, I can give it some attributes. So let's say this will be Bob. No, this will be probably do part 1. We'll give this service an attribute of part 1. And what this means is any policies can be applied to part 1. And so who or what identities can access this service? You'll see the default admin, you'll see Bob, and you'll see the router quick start. Now that router quick start was created when I did the quick start, ran that quick start command. And we could go through that if you want. That's kind of an interesting little thing. There's not too much there. Basically, the quick start command will create let's see. We'll create. Can I open that in a tab? I can't. Let's go back to here. We'll create a router. It'll download the router's JWT file, and it will enroll that router and turn it all on. That's what it does. So that's what the magic is that the quick start does. But here, we're giving Bob access to the SSH service. We want Bob to dial, let's say, part1.ssh. Now, cool part about Ziti, you can give it any name you want. And so this intercept, this will be what I SSH to. So I will SSH to part1.ssh. And you can call it whatever you want, .potato. It doesn't matter. .ziti is a common one you'll see me use. Some people don't like to overload a top-level domain in this way. So if you want to use your own top-level domain, utterly up to you. It does not matter. And port 22. The hosting configuration, we need the router. Now remember, we have a accessing Clint's computer at home and a hosting or binding side, the computer in the cloud. The computer in the cloud has an identity because we enabled that router to be tunneler enabled. And because the router is tunneler enabled, meaning the router can act like a tunneler, an OpenZiti tunneler, the router is able to host services or bind them. And so we can choose the router, and we're going to offload to localhost. This is also important when you're offloading. We're going to be doing what I like to call Ziti, and actually this is ZTHA, but let's look at the access modes, zero trust modes, right? So you have application access. This is the best what OpenZiti is striving for. This is SDK to SDK type of communication. No or very, very little trust involved. You can see you only have to trust a tiny bit of the device's host and a tiny bit of the service host. There's host access. Here you trust the host network. And so we are reducing the zero trust zone as we go here. Also very good though, right? So here everything is local host based, local host to local host. And then the least of the zero trust is the network access, where you not only trust the application, the device host, and the host network, but you also trust the remote network. I personally don't care for zero trust network access. However, I acknowledge that I use it from time to time at home. So like I have a router sits over, you can't see it, but there's a tiny little closet like right there. And I got an Innovato that I host my stuff from. It's just a little Raspberry Pi type thing. And so it runs a router, then gives me access into my home network. And so sometimes, because it's just dreadfully simple, I will do zero trust network access. But another thing I want to do in the future is show you RDP. I don't RDP that way. My Windows machine, also in that closet, has a ZT tunneler running on it. So when I RDP, I don't go through the Innovato and use zero trust network access. I go through the ZT Desktop Edge for Windows and use zero trust host access, all local host. And so that's why 127.0.0.1 is used and port 22. And then that was what it did. It made two configurations, it made two service policies, and it made a service. And so that's why using that little simple form is so helpful. It just really does save a bunch of time. One of the things I wanted to do, though, is if you go to the policies and you find the SSH to Docker policy, this actually, I want to say this is this is the part 1 policies. I'm going to change it because instead of Bob, I'm going to use part 1 identities. I'm going to give it an attribute. And this one's going to be called part 1 identities. So any identity that has this attribute will be able to dial the SSH service. And so now if I go over to Bob, he still has no services. Poor Bob. But if we go to identities and Bob and give Bob a part 1 identities and save Bob, I believe we did this correctly. Then Bob mysteriously and magically gets one new identity. And you can see Bob can now SSH to part1.ssh. I have also, ahead of time, copied my public key to my OpenZiti volume that I made out here. So I got to make a directory. So I can make a directory, cd, make a directory called .ssh. And now I can copy the OpenZiti mypub key to .ssh authorized keys. Now when I do that, assuming I did everything properly, let's go ahead and exit these two things. Now I should be able to SSH as Ziti at part1.ssh using the SSH key ID ED2559. Yes. And look, now it says I'm Ziti at Ziti. And so we did it. We've added our first service. So we've stood up a whole entire overlay network. Now, if I were to come up here, remember, this is the OpenZiti overlay. If I control C this, I should get kicked out immediately. Control C. And you can see I'm kicked out immediately. So I've stopped my instance. I can obviously start it right back up again. It takes like 7 seconds, I think. No, oh, that's when they run the quick start. That's because of the PKI generation. When you restart it, it only takes a few seconds, 3 seconds. And now I can SSH back there again. And here I am back in the Docker world in my VPS in the cloud through SSH using OpenZiti with the first service. We installed the ZAC. We saw that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's I think that's a pretty solid Ziti TV. Hopefully that gives you an idea. Well, I'm going to build on this. So future Ziti TVs will, part 2, part 3, I'll take this exact environment and we'll just keep marching it forward. I'll go back and watch the Ziti TV and figure out where I made little mistakes along the way and update the part 1 README so that, people like, for example, the backslashes were invisible. I'll update that for future generations who choose to watch this particular Ziti TV. And until next time, there's no questions in the chat. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for watching. It's always a good time hanging out on ZTV land, and we'll see you next time. Cheers. How do we stop this thing?